I never thought my life would spiral out of control the way it did. My name is Mark, and I'm just an average guy in my mid-30s, trying to juggle a career in tech while managing what I thought was a solid marriage with my wife, Jessica. We'd been together for over a decade, and while it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, I believed we had a good foundation. That was before everything fell apart. It started with a health scare. I was diagnosed with a minor form of skin cancer, a basal cell carcinoma. It was caught early, and the doctors assured me that removal was straightforward. But the news hit me hard. I felt like I was in a fog for weeks. My life flashed before my eyes, and all I could think about was getting through this and getting back to normal. Jessica was supportive, or so I thought. She helped me focus on healing, but I now see that I was so wrapped up in my own fears that I missed the signs she was slipping away. In the months following my diagnosis, I noticed Jessica seemed distant. At first, I chalked it up to my health issues. I was tired and I didn't want her worrying about me, but then I started to catch little things. She'd get a text and her demeanor would shift. This nervous energy would fill the room. She started going out more, claiming it was to decompress. "You know how stressful it's been for us, Mark," she would say, her tone almost defensive. I tried to brush it off because, honestly, I didn't want to make waves. I was just focused on healing, right? The first real clue something was off came one late night when I woke up to hear her whispering on the phone. I could hear snippets of her conversation, and I tried to convince myself it was just a friend. But the tone of her voice, the way she giggled, something about it didn't sit right. I asked her about it the next morning, and she brushed it off. "I was just talking to Corinne about the upcoming girls' night out," she said. "You know how it is." I wanted to believe her, but my gut was screaming. Then came the fateful day that changed everything. I had finally started to feel like myself again after the surgery, so I decided to surprise Jessica at her favorite cafe with her favorite flowers. I walked in, excited to see her, only to find her sitting with a guy I recognized as her high school ex, Ryan. My heart dropped. They were laughing and leaning into each other, and for a moment I just stood there frozen. I don't think they saw me at first. When they finally did, the look on Jessica's face was a mix of shock and guilt. I felt like I was in some twisted movie and all the color drained from the world around me. I couldn't process the anger, the betrayal, or the disbelief. All I could do was turn around and walk out. As I drove home, tears streamed down my face. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. When I got home, the anger began to bubble up. How could she? After everything we'd been through, she was reconnecting with him while I was fighting for my life. I decided to confront her right away. I didn't want to wait for her to come home and pretend like everything was fine. I needed answers. That confrontation was a whirlwind of emotions. When Jessica walked in, I immediately accused her of cheating. The look on her face was one of shock, and then she turned defensive. "Mark, it's not what you think," she exclaimed, eyes wide. I demanded to know what she was doing with Ryan. Her excuses ranged from "we were just catching up" to "you can't blame me for wanting to feel normal again." Each lie stung more than the last. I couldn't believe the woman I loved had been deceiving me while I was trying to heal. I was filled with rage and disbelief. I demanded to know how long it had been going on. Jessica swore it was just a one-time thing, that she was lonely and I was distracted by my health, but nothing she said made me feel better. If anything, it made me feel worse. I had been so focused on my recovery that I hadn't even noticed the cracks forming in our marriage. As she continued to deny any serious involvement, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and complete betrayal. How could she do this to me? I was supposed to trust her, to lean on her during one of the hardest times of my life. Instead, she took that vulnerability and threw it away. I felt like I was in a fog, emotions swirling as I tried to make sense of everything. How was I supposed to move forward from this? As I sat there, stunned, I knew I had to make a choice: confront the hurt and betrayal or find a way to heal from it all. The path ahead was uncertain and I was left reeling. I had to figure out my next steps. What was I going to do about our marriage? How could I ever trust her again? After that explosive confrontation, I spent the next few days in a haze. My world had been turned upside down and I felt like a ship lost at sea. I could hardly focus on work, and my friends noticed something was off. They asked if I was okay, but how could I explain? "Hey, my wife cheated on me while I was battling cancer. Can you believe that?" It felt too surreal to voice. Jessica was in this strange limbo, trying to act like nothing had changed, but in reality, everything had shattered. She would come home, her demeanor oscillating between anxious and overly cheerful, as if she were trying to convince both me and herself that everything could go back to normal. I found it nauseating, and each time she tried to engage me in conversation, I felt the resentment boil underneath my skin. One night, I finally decided to confront her again. I needed clarity. I had been going back and forth in my mind, wrestling with the idea of whether it was worth salvaging our marriage. She sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and I just blurted out, "Are you still seeing him?" The directness of my question caught her off guard. She put her phone down and looked me in the eye, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of truth, but it quickly vanished. "Mark, it was a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you," she replied, her voice shaky. "It was just a moment of weakness. I was lonely and I felt like you didn't care." It felt like a punch to the gut. Her excuses felt rehearsed, and I could see the cracks in her story. The more she spoke, the more I realized that she was trying to manipulate my feelings to protect herself. I pressed on, determined to dig deeper. "What do you mean you felt like I didn't care? I was fighting for my life. I was trying to survive, Jessica." My voice rose, filled with a mix of anger and sadness. I was done letting her deflect responsibility. "I fought through surgery and recovery, and you were out there reconnecting with a guy who was your past." She started to cry, and I almost felt guilty for pushing her, but then I remembered the pain she had caused me and the guilt faded away. "I want the truth," I said, my voice steady. "How long has this been going on? I swear it was just one time. We were texting for a few weeks, but I realized it was a mistake." Her voice cracked, but I could tell she was still holding back. "I love you, Mark. Please don't throw everything away over this." Her declarations felt empty, like words strung together without any real meaning. My heart was racing, and I had to make a choice. I could either accept her apology, pretend everything was fine, and try to salvage what was left of our marriage, or I could confront the reality of what had happened. The emotional turmoil was exhausting. I didn't want to be the angry, bitter husband who couldn't forgive. But forgiveness didn't come easily when the betrayal was so raw. I couldn't shake off the images in my mind of her with Ryan, laughing and sharing intimate moments while I sat alone, recovering. As the days passed, I took some time to reflect. I reached out to a few close friends, needing an outlet for my feelings. One friend, Jake, had been through a similar situation, though not quite as dramatic. He listened patiently as I poured my heart out, sharing my fears of being left and the pain of betrayal. "You deserve someone who will stand by you," he said, his voice calm yet firm. "You have to think about what you want for yourself. Can you ever trust her again? That's the real question." His words resonated within me. I realized that trust was a fragile thing. Once broken, it was nearly impossible to piece back together without leaving scars. That night after our conversation, I knew I had to make a decision. I took a walk around the neighborhood, the cool air filling my lungs as I mulled over everything. I thought about my life, the dreams we shared, and even the possibility of a future without Jessica. I felt a sense of loneliness, but also a flicker of strength. By the time I got home, clarity began to wash over me. I wasn't going to be a victim in this situation. I deserved respect and loyalty, especially after everything I had endured. I decided I needed a plan, something to take control of the narrative. I would confront Jessica once more, but this time I wouldn't just seek answers. I would show her that I wouldn't be walked over. The next day I asked her to sit down. I couldn't do this any longer. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. I didn't want to scream or yell. I wanted to be clear about my feelings. I laid everything out on the table, my hurt, my anger, and my need for honesty. "Jessica, I don't know if I can forgive you right now. I don't know if I even want to. But I need to know if you're committed to making this work or if you're still hung up on Ryan," I said, looking her directly in the eyes. Her response would determine the next steps I would take. It was time for her to show me who she really was beneath all the lies. As I sat across from Jessica, the tension in the room felt like a heavy blanket suffocating us both. I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she processed what I had just said. Her eyes darted around the room as if searching for the right words, but I knew that deep down she was grappling with her own guilt. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable before she finally spoke. "Mark, I want to make this work. I really do," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought I could handle it all, support you while also dealing with my own feelings. I never meant to hurt you. I was just lost." There was a rawness to her voice that almost made me waver, but I couldn't let it cloud my judgment. "Lost? Is that really it?" "Jessica," I shot back, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "You thought cheating would help you find yourself. How does that even make sense?" I could feel my heart pounding, anger clawing at the edges of my composure. "I've spent the last few months fighting for my health, and you were out there rekindling something with your ex. You were supposed to be my partner, my rock." "I know, and I'm sorry. I thought I was being supportive, but I got caught up in my emotions." "I miss the connection we used to have," she replied, her eyes glistening with tears. "I thought that maybe if I reached out to Ryan I could fill that void, but it was a mistake. I see that now." Her explanation felt like a feeble attempt to justify her actions. She was acknowledging her mistakes, but it didn't change the fact that she had betrayed my trust. "I want to believe you, Jess, but this isn't just about the affair. It's about how you handled everything while I was going through something so serious," I said, my voice wavering slightly. "I can't just forget that. Please just give me a chance to prove that I can change," she begged, her tone desperate. "I want to be the wife you deserve. Let me show you that I can do better." Her plea tugged at my heart, but I had to weigh my options carefully. It wasn't just about her willingness to change. It was about whether I could trust her again. I thought about everything we had built together over the years. The laughter, the road trips, the quiet evenings spent just enjoying each other's company. But it was also tainted now. Every memory felt shadowed by betrayal. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "You're asking me to take a leap of faith, but you've already proven you can choose someone else over me. How do I reconcile that? How do I know you won't run back to him again if things get tough?" "Because I love you," she insisted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I realize now that Ryan was just an escape. You're my life, Mark. I've been so selfish, but I want to work on this." The mix of anger and heartbreak within me was overwhelming. I felt like a pendulum swinging between hurt and hope. Could I really give her another chance? I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage, but this was different. This was a betrayal that cut deep. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "I need time to think," I finally said, realizing that I couldn't make a decision in the heat of the moment. "You need to understand that this doesn't just go away because you say you're sorry. Trust is earned, and right now you have a long way to go." Jessica nodded, her expression shifting from desperation to understanding. "I get it, Mark. I'll give you the space you need. I just hope we can find our way back to each other." With that, I left the room, my mind racing. I had made it clear that I wasn't ready to forgive or forget. I spent the next few days in a whirlwind of emotions: confusion, anger, sadness. I was constantly replaying the betrayal in my mind, and I felt like I was stuck in a loop. I started to lean on my friends more, seeking their advice and support. Jake was particularly helpful, reminding me that I had to prioritize my own mental health. "You have to take care of yourself first, man. If she's not willing to do the work to regain your trust, then you have to think about what's best for you." I began to see a therapist who specialized in relationship issues. The sessions helped me untangle my feelings, and I realized that while I still had love for Jessica, I had to put my own healing first. The therapist urged me to express my feelings without fear. "You have to be honest about your hurt and your needs," she advised. "Only then can you determine if the relationship can be salvaged." With that in mind, I decided to take a step back from the relationship for a while. I moved into the spare room, giving us both space to breathe. It was painful, but I knew it was necessary. I needed to focus on myself, to heal from all that had happened, and to see if Jessica was truly willing to fight for what we had. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself grappling with a complex mix of emotions. I missed her, but I also felt empowered by my decision to take control of my own life. I had to trust my instincts. This wasn't just about her. It was about me and what I wanted for my future. And as much as I wanted to believe that love could conquer all, I was beginning to understand that sometimes love isn't enough. There had to be respect, honesty, and commitment from both sides. I prayed she could realize that too. I had a long road ahead, but as I looked in the mirror each morning, I reminded myself that I was worth fighting for. It was time to take back my narrative and decide what my next steps would be. Would I give her another chance, or was it time to move on? I still didn't know the answer, but I was determined to find it. As the weeks rolled on, I settled into a new routine. I kept a careful distance from Jessica, focusing on my own healing while maintaining a sense of normalcy. I started going to the gym more, rekindling my love for running and lifting weights. It was therapeutic, allowing me to clear my head and channel my feelings into something productive. I also began exploring new hobbies like cooking, which I'd never really gotten into before. I found solace in measuring ingredients, following recipes, and creating meals that filled my home with warmth. But even as I filled my days with activities, my thoughts often drifted back to Jessica. I would catch glimpses of her as she moved about the house, her laughter echoing in the halls, the smell of her shampoo lingering in the bathroom. It was a constant reminder of what we had and what we had lost. I couldn't ignore the ache in my chest every time I noticed her trying to reach out to me, whether it was to talk or simply share a meal. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Jessica cautiously approached me. "Can we talk?" she asked, her eyes hopeful yet apprehensive. I could tell she was trying to gauge my mood, and I braced myself for an emotional conversation. "Sure," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I didn't want to shut her out completely, but I also wasn't ready to dive into reconciliation. We sat at the dining table, and I could feel the tension building in the air. She took a deep breath, her fingers nervously twisting the napkin in her lap. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began. "About us and what happened. I know I messed up, and I don't expect you to just forgive me overnight, but I want to show you that I'm committed to making things right." I listened intently, my heart caught between hope and skepticism. "What does that mean exactly?" I asked, trying to keep my expectations in check. "You say you want to make things right, but how?" "I've started seeing a therapist myself," she confessed, her eyes locked onto mine. "I want to understand why I did what I did. I want to change, not just for you, but for myself. This isn't just about the affair, it's about my insecurities and the way I've handled tough times." Her willingness to seek help was a step in the right direction, but I remained cautious. I could remember how easily she had dismissed my concerns before, and I didn't want to be fooled again. "That's good to hear, but it's going to take more than therapy," I replied, my voice steady. "You need to show me through your actions that you're serious about this. It can't just be words." "I know," she said, her voice softening. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I miss you, Mark. I want us back." Her sincerity tugged at my heartstrings, but I was still fighting against the instinct to protect myself. "I need time, Jess. I'm not ready to jump back into things just yet. You have to understand that." "I understand. I want to respect your space," she replied, a hint of resignation in her tone. "But please let me show you I can be better. Let me earn your trust back." I nodded, aware that rebuilding trust would be a long and difficult process. "Okay, let's take this one day at a time," I said, cautiously optimistic. It was clear we had a long way to go, but at least we were starting to communicate openly again. Over the next few weeks, Jessica made an effort to show me that she was committed to change. She would leave little notes around the house, expressing her love and appreciation for me. She even started cooking some of my favorite meals, trying to recreate the connection we once had. I could see she was genuinely trying, and yet there was still a wall between us that felt impenetrable. I began to attend therapy sessions regularly myself, finding great relief in talking about my feelings and gaining perspective on my situation. My therapist emphasized the importance of self-worth and personal growth. "You need to remember that you deserve a partner who respects and cherishes you," she told me. "Don't lose sight of yourself in this process." With every session, I grew more confident in who I was and what I wanted. I started setting some boundaries with Jessica, making it clear that while I was open to communication, I wouldn't tolerate any more deceit. Each time we talked, I would challenge her to be transparent about her feelings and her progress in therapy. One day, as we were sitting on the couch, I noticed she seemed particularly anxious. "What's on your mind?" I asked, sensing a shift in her mood. "I've been thinking about Ryan again," she admitted, her voice wavering. "I know. I shouldn't, but it's hard. I guess I'm just scared you won't ever be able to forgive me, and I worry I'll lose you for good." Her vulnerability was refreshing, and I appreciated her honesty. "You have to understand that I can't guarantee forgiveness right now. It's a process. But if you're serious about making things work, we need to focus on our relationship, not on your past," I replied. "I understand," she said, her expression earnest. "I'm committed to working on us, and I hope one day you can see that I'm not that person anymore." Her words resonated with me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to navigate this messy situation together. It wouldn't be easy, but I was beginning to see that change was possible. With time and effort, we started to rebuild the foundation of our relationship. We began to share more about our feelings, more openly than we had in years. I made it a point to express my needs and concerns, while Jessica worked on being more attentive and communicative. Still, lingering doubts haunted me. I couldn't fully shake the memory of her betrayal, and every now and then those insecurities would creep back in. It was a constant battle between hope and fear, and while I wanted to believe in our future, I knew we had to tread carefully. As time went on, I found myself at a crossroads. I had to decide whether I could trust her again or if it was time to move on. And with each conversation, each moment of connection, I could feel myself leaning toward the possibility of forgiveness. But was I ready to take the plunge? I had to decide soon, because the longer we stayed in this limbo, the more it felt like we were just delaying the inevitable. I needed to take a leap of faith, not just in Jessica, but in myself as well. It was time to face the truth of our relationship and determine if we could truly rebuild what was lost, or if it was time to cut our losses and walk away. As I settled into this new phase of uncertainty, I found myself wrestling with the idea of forgiveness. The emotional turmoil I had been through left me feeling raw, exposed, and unsure of what the future held. I had battled with my own emotions since the confrontation, and while there were moments of connection between Jessica and me, I still couldn't fully shake the feeling of betrayal that loomed like a dark cloud overhead. One evening, I decided to take a step back from everything and give myself some space to think. I grabbed my laptop and headed to my favorite coffee shop, hoping the change of scenery would help clear my mind. As I sat there, sipping on my dark roast, I started writing down my thoughts. I needed to process what I truly wanted for myself, and writing helped me organize my feelings. I wrote about the good times I shared with Jessica, our laughter, our dreams, and the plans we made for our future. But just as I began to feel nostalgia creeping in, I reminded myself of the pain of her betrayal, the lies, and the moments I felt abandoned during my health scare. The push and pull of all these emotions left me feeling like I was in a tug-of-war with my heart. While I wrote, I saw a couple at a nearby table, engaged in a deep conversation. They were laughing and leaning into each other, a palpable connection radiating between them. I felt a pang of longing for that kind of intimacy, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore the feeling that I might never have that with Jessica again. As I headed home, I knew I couldn't keep living in this state of limbo. I had to confront the reality of our situation. Jessica had made significant efforts to rekindle our connection, but I wondered if that was enough. It was a complex equation. Could I forgive her enough to rebuild our relationship, and did she truly understand the depth of what she had done? That evening, I summoned my courage and decided to have one more serious conversation with Jessica. I needed to set clear boundaries and express my feelings without holding back. When I called her into the living room, I could see she was a mix of anxious and hopeful. "Mark, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for what I was about to say. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Jess. I need to talk about where we stand." I paused, gauging her reaction. While I appreciate the efforts you're making, I can't help but feel that you may not fully grasp the impact of your actions. The betrayal isn't just something we can gloss over. I know, she said quickly, her eyes wide. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show you that I can change. I held up my hand to pause her. It's not just about what you're willing to do, Jess. It's about understanding why this happened in the first place. I need to know that you've truly reflected on your choices and that you're committed to being better, not just for me, but for yourself. I promise you I am, she said, the sincerity in her voice evident. I'm working on understanding my motivations. I don't want to lose you. I'm willing to put in the time and effort to prove that to you. Proving it is important, but it means nothing without self-awareness. I continued. I need to see real change. I'm not saying I haven't felt moments of hope since we started talking again, but I also feel like there's a part of me that's still holding back because of what you did. Jessica nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I understand. I just wish I could take it all back. I never wanted to hurt you. I've been so selfish. I need you to understand that trust takes time to rebuild. I can't just forget what happened because you say you're sorry, I said, my voice steady yet firm. I need to see that you're committed to working on yourself and our relationship. It starts with transparency and honesty. I'll do that, she promised, her voice almost a whisper. I'll make sure that I'm open with you about everything. I want you to feel secure in our relationship again. As we continued talking, I could see a glimmer of hope in her eyes. It was clear she was willing to fight for our relationship, but I still felt a weight on my chest. I needed to be honest with myself about what I wanted. Over the next few weeks, we took small steps towards rebuilding our connection. Jessica would often check in with me about my feelings, and I made it a point to express my own emotions instead of bottling them up. But even as we made progress, doubts lingered in my mind. One night, I found myself tossing and turning in bed, unable to sleep. I felt restless, and I couldn't shake the worry that I was still holding onto the hurt too tightly. I got up and went to the kitchen, where I found Jessica sitting at the table, her eyes fixed on a book but clearly lost in thought. Hey, I said softly, taking a seat across from her. Can't sleep. She sighed, closing the book and looking up at me. No, I've been thinking about us, about what we've been through. Me too, I admitted. I'm still trying to figure out what I want moving forward. I want to believe that we can rebuild, but it feels like there's still a wall between us. I know, she replied, her voice heavy with emotion. I want to break that wall down, but I also understand if you need more time. I took a moment to gather my thoughts. I need to be honest with you, Jess. I love you, but I'm scared that I'll never trust you fully again and that we'll be stuck in this cycle of hurt. I'm scared too, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but I'm willing to fight for us. I want to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve. I'll do whatever it takes. In that moment, I realized that if we were going to move forward, we needed to be open about our fears. Let's keep communicating, I said. It's the only way we'll know if we're truly getting there. We have to be willing to be vulnerable and honest. I'm here for that, she replied, her eyes earnest. I want to work through this together. I don't want to lose you, Mark. As we shared our fears and hopes, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. It wouldn't be easy, and I knew there were still challenges ahead. But for the first time since everything had happened, I felt the possibility of healing. We might never return to the way things were, but perhaps we could create something new together. A foundation built on mutual respect, open communication, and a commitment to growth. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to pull us through the pain. The journey was far from over, but I was willing to take the next steps, one at a time. The question remained, could we truly rebuild, or was it time for both of us to walk away? The answer was still unfolding, and I was determined to find it together. As the weeks continued to unfold, Jessica and I found ourselves navigating the delicate waters of rebuilding our marriage. Each conversation felt like a step forward, yet I couldn't shake off the feeling that the journey was fraught with uncertainty. Would we emerge from this as a stronger couple, or was this merely a band-aid over a deeper wound? I took the time to reflect on our relationship, pondering the nature of trust and the fragility of love. I had always believed in the idea that love could conquer all, but this experience had tested that belief in ways I never anticipated. I had to confront not only Jessica's betrayal, but my own insecurities and fears. I realized that I had to be emotionally honest with myself as well as with her. One evening, as we sat on the couch sharing a quiet dinner, I decided to probe deeper into the idea of trust. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to rebuild our relationship, I said, my fork hovering over my plate. Trust is at the center of that. I worry that even with all the progress we've made, I'm still not fully there yet. Jessica looked at me, her expression earnest. I understand, Mark. It's going to take time. I've been trying to show you through my actions that I'm committed to changing. I want you to see that I'm not the same person I was before. I appreciate that, I replied, holding her gaze. But I need to know more about your process. What have you been working on in therapy? She took a deep breath, clearly having anticipated this question. I've been focusing on understanding my emotional triggers and why I felt the need to reconnect with Ryan. I realized I was trying to escape my own feelings of inadequacy. It's been tough, but I'm learning to confront those insecurities instead of running away from them. Her honesty made me soften, and I could see the effort she was putting into her own self-improvement. I want us to build a future where we can both be vulnerable without fear of judgment, I said, feeling a sense of hope. But I need to see that you're committed to this journey, not just for a few weeks, but for the long haul. I promise you I am. I want to be the partner you deserve, she replied, her eyes filling with sincerity. This isn't just about us. It's about me becoming a better person overall. I want to be someone you can rely on completely. The more she spoke, the more I felt the walls around my heart begin to crumble. I realized that while the path to forgiveness would be long and winding, we were both committed to putting in the work. Trust might not be restored overnight, but perhaps we could rebuild it slowly together. As days turned into weeks, we made it a point to set aside dedicated time for each other. We would go for walks, engage in heart-to-heart talks, and even start a new hobby together, cooking classes. It was an attempt to create new memories, untainted by the past. With each shared experience, I found myself looking at Jessica in a different light. I began to see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, lost beneath the layers of hurt and betrayal. One day, I noticed she was more open with her phone, inviting me to look at her messages, showing me where she was and who she was talking to. It felt like a significant step forward. I want you to feel secure, she said one evening. I don't want there to be any secrets between us. At that moment, I felt the tension in my chest lift slightly. I realized that while I couldn't forget what had happened, I could choose to focus on the effort she was making. It felt like a risk, but sometimes taking a leap of faith was necessary for love to thrive. Then came the day I had been both dreading and looking forward to, a meeting with Jessica's therapist. She had suggested that I join one of their sessions to better understand her progress and the work she had been doing. I was skeptical but willing to give it a shot, hoping it would help me gauge the sincerity of her efforts. As I sat in the therapist's office, I listened intently as Jessica shared her experiences and insights. I watched her articulate her feelings, her struggles, and the steps she was taking to work on herself. It was a vulnerable moment, and I could see the weight she carried. For the first time, I felt a real sense of empathy for her struggle. After the session, the therapist suggested we have a joint session to discuss our feelings about the relationship. I was hesitant but agreed, knowing it could be a breakthrough moment. During the session, we laid everything on the table. I expressed my fears of betrayal and how they affected my ability to trust. Jessica listened patiently, acknowledging my concerns and affirming my feelings. I understand that I've shattered your trust, she said, her voice steady. But I'm committed to doing what it takes to earn it back. I want to be transparent and build a solid foundation with you. As we talked, I felt the heaviness of resentment slowly dissipate, replaced by a cautious optimism. The therapist guided us through effective communication strategies, emphasizing the importance of vulnerability and honesty. The session was enlightening, providing us both with tools to express our emotions while fostering understanding. Afterward, as we walked to the car, I turned to Jessica. You did really well in there. She smiled, the warmth returning to her eyes. Thank you. I know it's a long road ahead, but I feel like we're making progress." That night, as we settled into bed, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I still held on to some doubts, but I was beginning to trust in our efforts. Each day felt like a building block, slow but steady, and I could see the potential for growth if we continued on this path. As the months rolled on, I found myself more at peace with our situation. Jessica continued to work on herself, and I learned to open up about my feelings. We built a new rhythm together, one based on mutual respect and understanding. I couldn't predict what the future held, but I realized that love was not just about the good times. It was about weathering the storms. Together, I chose to embrace the uncertainty, knowing that regardless of the outcome, we were both committed to growth. In the end, this experience taught me invaluable lessons about vulnerability, communication, and the importance of self-worth. I learned that sometimes love isn't just about holding on. It's about letting go of the past and daring to step into the unknown. As I reflected on where we had been, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but I was ready to face them head-on, with or without Jessica. The choice was mine, and I was learning to trust myself again.